Every year, your football team will take a player in the draft you do not like that they took. This year, I think this is the pick for me. I think this is the pick for a lot of Browns fans for a lot of different reasons. But the Browns go Dillon Gabriel here at pick 94. Now, I'm not a hater of Dillon Gabriel as a prospect. I thought he fit more soundly into the fourth round. Like, if I thought the fourth round conversation of quarterbacks, he was the best of the fifth round. I mean, not the fourth round, fifth round guys. I would have never endorsed taking him in the third round, and would have even had a hard time taking him in the fourth round. So taking him in the third, I'm not a big fan of that. I think it's a bit of a reach here. But I get what Dillon Gabriel brings to the table as a quarterback. There's also the other element of this, right? You took him over Shedeur Sanders, who a lot of people wanted the Browns to take it to. Now, the truth is, and I think this is the truth a lot of people in the Shedeur camp have to accept, nobody wants Shedeur Sanders right now. For whatever reason, nobody wants Shedeur Sanders right now, in the NFL at least. The Raiders have passed on him like 3 times. The Giants have passed on him. Cleveland has passed on him 4 times. It seems clear to me that Shedeur Sanders is not valued in the same way by NFL teams that NFL media and fans have valued Shedeur Sanders. There is a clear disconnect there. For whatever reason it might be, whether it be because Shedeur has only played for one coach, his father, whether it be because Shedeur had some bad interviews, whether it be the pre-draft process. I think it tends to be all of these things with Shedeur Sanders that has created this perfect storm for him to fall in the draft like he has. And this is not a storm that was unpredictable. This was a storm that everybody could see coming that was looking for it. I did multiple videos on why I think Shedeur Sanders is going to slide in the draft. Not to this extent. I'm not going to act like I predicted him falling out the first and then out the second and now out the third. But I thought that there would be a good chance that there would be a fall because of a lot of things that the Sanders camp had been doing. One, they had been very strange with how they presented Shedeur. The East-West Shrine Game thing is the one that sticks out to me. Shedeur commits to the East-West Shrine Game. He tells everybody he's going to play in the East-West Shrine Game and participate in the East-West Shrine Game. He meets with 3 teams, and then he pulls the rug out on any of the East-West Shrine Game stuff. I have to think that didn't create a good impression, right? Then you hear people leaking out that Shedeur's a guaranteed top 3 pick. That's legitimately what was going on. There was a lot of people who believed after the stunt he pulled at the East-West Shrine Game that he was going to be a top 3 pick. I imagine that didn't rub NFL teams the right way. How he showed up at the combine did not rub NFL teams the right way. The fact that he didn't throw, I thought was a big missed opportunity. The fact that he didn't participate in the throwing drills at the combine. I mean, like, I don't think any of this is a mistake. That the guys who were at the Senior Bowl who actually participated in the pre-draft process have been taken before Shedeur. And even with Shedeur, a lot of his visits were in tandem with Travis Hunter. I called him Bigfoot in the pre-draft process because it seemed like everybody was going out their way to obscure the vision of him as a prospect. And something has made NFL teams so insanely uncomfortable with the idea of drafting him, whether it be his fame, his profile, whether it be his father, whether it be his athleticism or lack thereof, whether it be how they've handled the pre-draft process, his interviews, or all of them combined, that have put him in a spot to where a lot of teams have passed on taking Shedeur, right? The Saints took Tyler Shuck at 40 over Shedeur. Now, say what you want about taking Dillon Gabriel before Shedeur. It's not going to be the most popular pick in the world. I understand that. But Tyler Shuck at 40 over Shedeur, I thought was even crazier. There's a lot of things indicating to you that the NFL teams did not appreciate that Shedeur Sanders felt like he didn't have to do the pre-draft process. And maybe there was something they wanted to see that they didn't get confirmed there that scared them off of him. All of this says there's going to be a lot of teams that pass on Shedeur Sanders and maybe even more teams after this. So I'm not coming at this video with the perspective of I'm mad that they took Dillon Gabriel over Shedeur Sanders. At this point, it's pick 90. You're not drafting the future franchise of your quarterback at pick 90 more than likely. This pick was never going to be about the franchise of the quarterback. The Browns are going to handle that next offseason with the picks that they got, right? That's where that question is likely to be answered about what the Browns think the future of this team looks like at quarterback. This is a pick to serve a role. And the role that they made this pick with is the problem that I have with it. Because Dillon Gabriel is being drafted, in my mind, to be a developmental backup quarterback. Somebody who they think can eventually become a solid backup. No different than what they drafted DTR with. My problem with this selection is that the third round, even if it's late third round, which it was, it's one of the last picks in the third, is far too early to make a selection like that for those purposes. Elick Ayamaner, who I think could be a starting wide receiver, was out there. There were multiple players who could be starters for your team that were out there at that point. Taking Dillon Gabriel, who at best will become a backup for you, maybe a low, couple game starter, right? Like that's what the range you see for him. Maybe they think the kid is Brock Purdy and we're wrong and they're going to prove us wrong and we're going to feel stupid for criticizing the pick, right? Maybe this is a frozen takes thing where people will come back in the future and act like everybody wasn't mad that they took Dillon Gabriel, right? Like maybe this will be fodder for revisionist history in a couple of years. My issue isn't that they took Dillon Gabriel over Shedeur Sanders. I understand why they would do that. If you don't see Shedeur as a future starter in the NFL or the starter for you in the NFL, then you don't take him, right? And I think that's why he's falling, is because not a lot of teams are going to take him to be a developmental backup, but teams will be more than willing to take Dillon Gabriel to be a developmental backup. The issue I have is why are we taking a developmental backup quarterback in the third round? That's the part of this pick that I cannot consolidate with. You want to take Sanders, you don't want to take Sanders. If they would have took Sanders here, I would have been fine. I don't know how much time and room he would have to develop here. And I think the reality is, even with Jalen Milroe and with Shedeur Sanders and probably with Dillon Gabriel, the teams that are going to benefit from these guys reaching their ceiling, if they ever reach their ceiling, are probably not going to be the teams that draft them. Right? I don't think the Seahawks are going to benefit from Jalen Milroe. I don't think whoever drafts Shedeur at this point is going to benefit from taking him. I think once you get to this point, you're going to bounce around a lot. We've seen it with Malik Willis, who bounced around, right? And maybe the team that benefits from it is the team that gets you second or third. So again, that's why I'm not really tripping over which quarterback you took. I'm not the lowest on Dillon Gabriel. I had him, I liked Shedeur over him. I liked Jalen Milroe over him, and Will Howard over him. And then he was behind Will Howard. Will Howard, I thought, had the better tape in 2024. But to Dillon Gabriel's credit, Dillon Gabriel has the better career body of tape, right? Like Dillon Gabriel has 5 really strong seasons of college football, multiple different offenses, multiple different schools, a large body of work, a very experienced body of work as a quarterback. And Will Howard really only has the one season at Ohio State as a plus level season as a starter. Dillon got 5, right? So I can understand why you would go Dillon Gabriel over Will Howard, even though me personally, I tend to lean more Will Howard than Dillon Gabriel. But hey, if that's where you're at, that's where you're at. You got to prove it by coaching him and, just show us that you're right about that. And I'm willing to be proven wrong and show us that you're right about that. I understand that my opinion is not infallible. Just because I hate a pick doesn't mean that player is going to be terrible. And just because I love a pick doesn't mean that player is going to be amazing. Amazing, right? My opinion is just my opinion. And we'll see what actually happens. And I'm going to give it room to be proven wrong or right. But if Dillon Gabriel does only become a developmental backup for this football team and you took him in the third round, that feels like a waste. It feels like a bit of a waste here. I understand it's the equivalent to a fourth because it's a comp third that you picked up for trading Amari Cooper. But you took on $20 million in dead cap for this pick, and you took Dillon Gabriel, who I don't think you anticipate being a starting quarterback for you. Now, they said in the press conference they expect Dillon Gabriel to compete with Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco for the starting job. If Kevin wants to, here's what I'll put out here too, right? This is the year for Kevin to prove that he truly provides a floor at the quarterback position, right? Because that's been Kevin's thing, is that he's been able to get good quarterback play out of some questionable names out the pass, especially when he's running his offense. And this is a year where he's running his offense. So if Kevin wants to demonstrate that floor and he does it with this quarterback room, okay, well, I have to believe it at that point, right? So this seems like somebody Kevin wants. I don't know if Kevin thinks this guy's going to be the face of the franchise or anything like that. But, this is somebody that they thought well enough to take him in the top 100. We'll see what that becomes. But, I see Dillon Gabriel as a backup. That doesn't mean that that's what his path is guaranteed to be, right? I didn't have any opinion of Brock Purdy the year that he came out. Hell, I was low on Bo Nix last year, another Oregon quarterback, and he ended up having a pretty good year. We'll see what he does this year, but he had a pretty good year. Again, not trying to act like my opinion is infallible. And more importantly, I'm not trying to portray the attitude that I think my opinion is infallible. And if that the Browns do something that broach my opinion, well, how dare they, right? That's not the way I try to carry about this. I have my opinion. I have my evaluations. And I do a lot of work behind the scenes to come to my evaluations of these guys. And there's players I like. There's players I don't like. But I also understand that no matter how hard I work, no matter how much time I put into this, there are resources that teams have that I don't have access to. They have access to these players. I don't have access to these players. And also, even if you study, even if you're really smart about this, you can disagree with somebody about a player, and you guys can both kind of be right, and they get the proof their chance, right? And so we'll see what they do with this. This is my least favorite pick of this draft so far. I've been pretty okay with a lot of the picks they've had. Harold Fanon might be my favorite pick of the draft, and we'll talk about that in a separate video. I didn't want to muck up the vibes of getting Harold Fanon with the Dillon Gabriel thing here. If you're asking me, I thought Dillon Gabriel made more sense in the 4th or 5th round. Taking him in the 3rd is a bit of a reach here. The added thing, I wonder how this gets received if Shedeur Sanders isn't on the board at the same time that you go with Dillon Gabriel. But we'll see, right? They get to prove if they were right about this during the season. If they're right about the Kenny Pickett thing, if they're right about the Joe Flacco thing, if they're right about the Dillon Gabriel thing, they get to prove if they are right about this or not. And we'll see what kind of body of work they put out there. I'm not the most confident in it, right? Joe Flacco's 40. I can't imagine you can expect him to play 17 games at 40 years old when he hasn't done so since 2017. Same thing with Kenny Pickett. I'm not a big believer in him at all. I'm not a big fan of him as a prospect. And Dillon Gabriel, who I did like in this process. I just liked him less than Will Howard and Shedeur Sanders, who were both available when you selected Dillon Gabriel. And I certainly like the idea of getting a Xavier Watts or a position player overtaking a quarterback here at 94 if Dillon Gabriel was going to be the quarterback that you wanted. But if you felt like he was not going to be available at 126 and you didn't want to run the risk there and you thought that highly of him, then okay, it's up to you to prove that he's worth that pick and, put him in a position to be successful. So not a fan of this pick. Not my favorite choice here. We'll see what happens with it. This goes for picks I love, and this goes for picks I hate, right? When it's a pick I love, I have to remind myself how I feel about this pick today is not as important as how I feel 2 years from now, right? Perion Winfrey's a permanent reminder for me, right? I love that pick. Didn't work out, right? Some picks you love, JLK, I love that pick. Worked out. Grant Delpit, loved that pick. It worked out. There's a lot of picks that I love immediately. They work out. There's some picks I love immediately. They don't. And vice versa. There's some picks I hate. Wasn't a big fan of Martin Emerson. Ended up being pretty good for the football team, right? So we'll see what happens with this selection. Not a pick I love, but how I feel today, it's not as important as how I feel in a couple years. And if a couple years I'm like, hey, man, Dillon Gabriel wasn't that bad of a pick, then that's ultimately what matters the most. We'll see. We'll see. But Dillon Gabriel, it's a bold choice for sure. It is a really bold choice, but they went with it. Let's see what they can pull out of this. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.